decided to do is sort of build a dictionary and turn it into sort of an electronic format. And then what we're going to do with that is put it into these sort of mobile applications, electronic applications. Some of the young people would use the term app. So we're going to have these language apps in Cree lessons. We also brought together a number of our fluent Cree speakers. And the reason we chose Cree was, kind of goes back to what I mentioned before, we only have 2 surviving Chippewa speakers. So at this point, we only chose to focus on Cree, but I have some ideas on how we're going to address Chippewa, so maybe I can talk to some of you folks a little later on how I want to do that. Anyhow, we brought together this language advisory group. Part of our getting this project going was to do a survey, much like the one that was mentioned here with the Little Shell Chippewa earlier. So we devised a survey. We actually put it up using an electronic tool on the internet called SurveyMonkey. So we've had close to 400 surveys completed. We're going to gather up to 600, and we'll analyze the results. And from there, we're going to actually do something as part of our pilot project. And we're going to bring in up to 25 people, adults, sort of a cross-section of our community, some who, for instance, speak little or no Cree language, and then some who may be fluent. Bring them together and do a series of language modules over the summer. We'll do a pre-test, post-test, get their feedback on how these language apps, and also we're building a website, but see how that all fits together, and if it's sort of something that can be usable to preserve and perpetuate the Cree language. It's quite ambitious because if you think about it, the awards that came to the state were actually less than 1 year. So in less than 1 year, we've had a tall order, but I'm very confident in the staff that I have that we'll be able to do at least those things. Mr. Gray mentioned earlier about these deliverables, and that's part of our deliverables is to provide to the Mountain State Historical Society these things. But more importantly, it's more than just. It actually is beyond what we're going to provide the state, because it's kind of like really cultivating an interest. So many of our young people, and I gave you some statistics earlier, at least at Rocky, so many of your young people are unaware of the importance of language. And so much of our life, even in this modern age, is tied around language and the culture, the behaviors. When I was the Dean of Academics at Stone Child College about 10, 11 years ago, I recall reading a letter to the editor in a local paper. It was something about native languages. And the comment came, or the question in this letter to the editor, something to the effect of, why in the world would anyone want to know or learn an Indian language? What good will that do them today? They're all gone. And of course, me, with an academic background, I turned on my computer and I started writing a reply. But not so much as a reaction, like a knee-jerk reaction, but I thought, I can list probably more reasons, just off the top of my head, of why a person would want to know a native language. But I realized that in a sort of an English-speaking country, in many of our, there's a lot of even attempts now to have these English-only laws, that we have a long battle ahead of us. And that was 10, 11 years ago, and we're still fighting that in some ways. But I'm also glad to say that people like Daryl Robes-Kip, and the different projects that are funded by the state, that we're doing the work that needs to be done. And it goes back to that idea of partnerships and collaborative work. We can't do it alone, and I think this has been stated several times. And so I'll echo that and say that we can't do this alone. Even if you're a non-native or a non-native speaker, or you know just a little bit, or Papi Sis, as we say, we need help. We're fully capable of restoring our language, and certainly in living in that way. Now, I would be foolish to assume that we want to go back and live as we did, in the days of the buffalo, living in a teepee. That's not what this is about. This is about part of that pride, that heritage, our history, and reclaiming that. If we can do this within the next 10, 20, 30 years, I think we have done a great thing to carry on the legacy of our ancestors. And I mentioned that, at least at Rocky Boy, we have a small handful. We need to approach those people who have that information, because in that information, it's kind of like our tribal DNA, if you will, our codes of life that were passed on before by word of mouth, through ceremonies, through rituals, through those traditions. And we need to tap into that code because it's in us. It's already there. We just need to open up our minds. I used to say when doing research, particularly in Indian country, that we have to approach this situation with an open mind and not an empty head. We know there's efforts out there on both sides of the border that we're doing things, and you'll hear more about this, I'm sure, today. And so we want to play a small part, because as we reach across communities to our relatives, and that's how we're going to get it done. And so I don't want to cut too much into the lunch hour into the next speaker, but I want to say that if you have ideas, share them. Remember that phrase I said before, we must learn from one another. I can't overstate that enough. And I know you have the support of the leadership here, and all you good folks out there. I mean, we're all working together. I wish there was some sort of magical formula, or maybe I could wave a wand over everybody and say, this is all going to, it's all going to be easy. I wish I could do that, but I can't. But that, to me, is not only as a tribal college president, but in sort of my own personal commitment, is that I believe it can be done. I love the challenge, and I'm not going to give up until I somehow ensure that, at least for my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren, that that aspect of culture, language, heritage, history, all those things will be there available to them, and no one can take that away from them. Like the story of my grandmother, I think that's a testament to how resilient we are as Native people. So with that, I want to say, Kita Tamyan Miigwech. Thank you for having me here, for the invitation and this great opportunity to be part of a big celebration. Congratulations to you.
Okay, thanks. I want to mention again before we start the next speaker, we'll take a little break right after our next speaker, and some coffee, pop, whatever, refreshments, and then we'll get back together and we'll hear from our brothers and sisters from Canada. Like Mr. St. Pierre was saying, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Unfortunately, the Little Shell people have been, in many cases deprived in many situations like other tribes, but more so because of the complicated events and happenings with the government and so forth, that have really lost a lot of the language. So, as a director of the language research program, my first thought was, hey, wait a minute. We started out, guys like Mr. Davis and I started out at Rocky Boy in 1970. Uh-oh, I give away my age. But we started out in 1970, and we were going through a lot of laborious type stuff, just like, prehistoric times, trying to reinvent a wheel. And we did a lot of stuff with, they had an alphabet there. They do have the alphabet. And we were developing materials and we were writing the alphabet. The older folks in our research program, Rockyville, were writing out the stories and this stuff with the alphabet, with handwriting. So it was very laborious. And I thought to myself, you know, there's been a lot done throughout the country, and especially hearing about what the folks have been doing in Canada. I says, why reinvent the wheel? Let's take and see what's out there with all these languages. Let's do the research. Let's get on the internet. Let's find everything we can find on those languages, and that's our languages. And let's see what we can do about putting together a curriculum in a rather short time period. As Mr. St. Pierre mentioned too, we have a tall order in such a short time. These programs were approved in, let's see, I think it was September, and then we didn't receive any funding until November. And they said, here, we've given each of you tribes in Montana $250,000 to develop a program within, you know, and that's really a tall order in such a short time frame. But anyhow, so that's why ours is based on research. And that's why we thought about, you know, developing a partnership. And Mr. Verhoeven has also brought that up earlier on when we organized as an advisory board for the language program. That we thought, why don't we develop partnerships? We can do it alone. And as I said earlier on, it's like a basketball team. You find one player here that might not have any particular skills or maybe doesn't do his job, but that's a team now. So you really have to work together as a team, collaborate, share, help, do whatever you can, because we're all working on the same languages. But that's what we really based our project on. But our primary objective here with the Little Shell Language Program is to offer an adult program as well as a student program. So with that, let me introduce our next speaker, Ms. Corey Smith, who is the Indian Education Program Director for the public school system here in Great Falls. And she can tell you about the number of students, Little Shell students in the school system, and also the total number of Indian children, you know, throughout the school from other tribes.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. I have a teacher voice. My name is Corey Smith, and I am the new Director of Indian Education for Great Falls Public Schools. I've been on my job for about 2 months now, and I'm very honored to be here today to be a part of the team, as Gerald Sr. was saying. We know that language is very important to our students, and it was serendipitous as I came on as the new director. People were always asking me, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And of course, my goals are to make sure that all of our American Indian students in Great Falls Public Schools succeed and achieve their goals. That's what my goal is. But there was just something in the back of my head that I always knew if I was in this position, and I've been teaching for Great Falls Public Schools for 20 years, if I did come to this position, that language was something that I really wanted to work on. Language was something that I wanted to bring forward to our kids in Great Falls Public Schools. And so here I get a phone call from Gerald Sr. About a month and a half in, and he's like, let's talk about language. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly where I want to go. So I agreed to be part of the team, and we want to see what we can do in Great Falls Public Schools to revitalize the language. Now it's kind of hard for us because we're an urban setting. And, well, actually, I guess Montana doesn't even have an urban setting. When I was doing some of my research for doctoral mocks, I used the word urban, and my cohort said, well, that it's called off-reservation because you're not big enough in Montana to be urban. So we're off-reservation is what we're called. And so we know that we have about 239 Little Shell students in our Great Falls Public Schools. We know that the biggest majority of those students are elementary students, not high school students. We know that we have about 57 other tribes represented by our 506s. So that's a lot of tribes. So when you start talking about language, what do? Well, of course, what we start to do is we start to work with our nearest tribe and the languages of the nearest tribe, and then we grow from there. Again, we won't bite off too much more than we can chew either. So, with that said, all I really wanted to let you know is that we will be a partner, we will be a team member, we will be walking alongside as these deliverables get put in our hands. And I guess I have a vision too of our kids working with this technology. If we don't have, if any of you know speakers that would love to come and work with our kids and teach them the language, that would be great. But if we don't have them right here in Great Falls, we have VisionNet, we have Skype, we have FaceTime, I don't know. We have everything that maybe we can be doing some things with Rocky Boys and Belcourt. And I am actually a Chippewa enrolled member of the Belcourt tribe. So, let's see. One other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, just because I got a platform here. We are having a Native American Family Forum. It's a Graduation Matters Forum, and it's going to be next Saturday from 2 to 6, and we would so love to have all of you come. And what it is we're going to be talking about incentivizing students and families, American Indian students and families, to make sure that they're walking across the stage at par with their non-Indian peers, because right now we don't have that happening. So. All right, so I'm going to give you these, and then when I give you these, I'd also like to introduce my partner. Well, I shouldn't say it like that. My cohort at work, and Chris Olszewski, and he is the director of curriculum, where exactly what's going to happen with this language piece is going to come in. And I am so thankful that Chris gave up a little bit of his Saturday to come here. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Chairman and members of the Tribal Council. A few weeks ago, we had a great opportunity to sit down with Senator Tester's cabinet members who came through, of course, looking at how do we move forward in education. And as all of you know, Senator Tester has been right here for you and helping you move forward. And we asked, Superintendent Tammy Lacey asked the cabinet, how can we help? And the direct answer was, get involved and become part of that team. Contact the council and come forward and offer our help. And I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so I just want to say good luck. We're looking forward to the future, and you are in really good hands with Corey. Thank you for inviting her to be part of this process. But just know, as Superintendent Lacey, who could not be here as she's moving forward with promotion of the school levy this weekend, she has an open door. All of us have an open door up on the quote unquote the hill. So please come see us. We have a lot of great ideas in the works, including the language coursework, but we're also talking about Native American studies and continuing our culture camps, not only with students, but also with Indian Ed for All, with our teachers. And so thank you for, again, the invite for Corey to come today, and good luck in the future.
See, I think everybody's going to shoot me. I said we'd take a small break, and I've just been informed by the chairman. A number of years ago, I used to boss that chairman around. Now it's the other way. The tables have turned. He said, I'm sorry, we can't have a break because, we're running behind. And so therefore, please feel free to get up and grab some refreshments. And I think Mrs. Donnie Davis will be so kind to help direct you to get some refreshment there. So if you would, please, just feel free to get up and grab something while we're going on with the program, okay? So at this time, I'll turn the program over to okay, excuse me, Mr. Davis just mentioned that he's leaving, coming back a little later, but there's a gray car blocking his view, parking spot.
I'm on it right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Verhoeven, and we'll go on with the program, but please feel free to get up anytime for refreshments until lunch.
Hey folks, it's good to take a break and do, but also to focus here on what we have at this point is something that really comes to the heart of what it means to be Little Shell. I'm thinking of Dr. St. Pierre's statement, his memory of his grandfather who spoke those 7 languages. And that is, I've got to say this just to put forth a context for what our relatives north of the medicine line have to offer us today, and having come the distance they have to the western edge of the homeland. Dr. St. Pierre mentioned his grandfather, and we call that multilingual. And his grandfather, at the time the buffalo went away and the reservations were created, every one of your ancestors, every one of your great-great-grandparents were multilingual. Every one of them spoke Cree, spoke Assiniboine, spoke Ojibwe, spoke Michif, spoke French, spoke Blackfeet. Depending upon where they were in their homeland, they spoke a number of core languages and then bits and pieces of other languages. Every Aboriginal person in North America was multilingual. Now, what that also means is every single one of your ancestors was also polyethnic. And what I mean by that is that today we say Cree, today we say Assiniboine and Blackfeet. Those tribes exist, but in every one of those tribes, half of the Blackfeet are made up of Crows because they got their women and children. Half the Assiniboine are made up of Cheyennes. Half of every tribe are made up of the multi-polyethnic reality of the Aboriginal circumstance. Now, what we have with the folks up north, our relatives up north, and what exists in this language, the Michif language, as distinct from, say, Cree, or Chippewa, or Piikani, or Nakota, or Grovant, that this Michif language is a language that reflects this old reality that was the truth of our ancestors' existence. In the language of Michif, there are Cree words and Ojibwe words, and there are Blackfeet words, but there are also French words and Gaelic words. So the total Aboriginal reality at the time when the first non-Indians showed up and intermarried with all the tribes, not just the Little Shell tribe, but all the tribes, that a new language was born at that time. Now, up in Canada, I'll say Canada holds maybe direct relatives. Canada holds 3 to 1, in a sense, of the borderland, the bloodlines of the borderland that are the relative peoples that comprise the Little Shell people, the Turtle Mountain people, the Rocky Boy people, and all the Métis people north of the border. North of the border, Métis are a known quantity. In the United States, they're not. So we've had to say we're Chippewa, or we're Chippewa Cree. And the Assiniboines have had to, in a sense, sublimate the fact that there's a whole lot of Chippewa Cree that are part of the Assiniboines. Anyhow, so up north, where there's so many, and the language is a bit stronger, and that they've been able to develop over the years institutes that have worked for the last generation, the last 2 generations, on strengthening the language and the culture. And I want to start first with welcoming to us representatives of the Gabriel Dumont Institute, and then we'll go to the Louis Riel Institute. And like this is an intellectual feast about language and culture, I'm saving dessert for the last with Norman Fleury. And so we'll devour Norman when his time comes with what he has to offer. But first I'd like to invite Karen Schmann up to the podium here to talk a little bit about the work of Gabriel Dumont Institute. She's Director of Publications and Curriculum at the Gabriel Dumont Institute. And following Karen, we'll invite David Morin up to talk about work that they're involved in. Thank you very much, Karen.
And I guess I'm at the point where we can say good afternoon too. I guess I'd first like to invite everyone to stand first. And have a stretch. Thank you. Please remain standing if that's more comfortable for you. I'm not insulted if you're not sitting. Well, it is a great honor for us to be here, especially amongst your chairman, your council, and your elders, and the members of the Little Shell and the other special guests here. I guess that one of the fundamental things I'd like to tell you about the Gabriel Dumont Institute is that it was founded in 1980, but it was founded as the result of a 1976 cultural conference at which our elders and community members said, we know that our people can overcome the poverty and lack of education that we have, and even the oppression we were experiencing, if we have a mechanism that's, again, a plan, and someone talked about the plan this morning, that you have a plan to preserve your culture and your heritage, and they felt that education was the vehicle to do that. So the mission of the Institute is to meet the education and training needs of the Métis of Saskatchewan through the formation of the Institute, and to preserve and promote Métis history and culture. And when I heard your council give its report about the transparency and the accountability that is so important, I thought of the time that Gabriel Dumont Institute almost went under because we didn't pay attention to that. And it's so fundamental to your success and your longevity that I can't stress enough how important it is. So when they seem like they're being the bad guys because they're the report and finance police, it's for your own good. It took us over a decade to overcome both the stigma and the mess that we were in, and so it's through keeping our noses scrupulously clean and doing all the right things and having, I guess, a critical mass of people that don't want to see us go there again that we've been able to thrive since that time. I really enjoyed this morning's joke especially because it elevated the role of women in our communities and really how they do hold up the sky and are really, I guess, at least for us Mitchell, a matriarchal society where the women are the foundation of the community, and so that was a cute joke. But the one thing I noted, I said to myself as I got a chuckle out of that, oh, but it's missing our worldview. Our worldview would be that we would pray together, and then we would combine our strengths to work together to get across. And so that would be, I think, one of the reasons why we want to preserve Michif as well, is because the worldview comes through the language, it comes through the culture, and no matter how hard we try to translate that into English or other languages, we're going to lose something if we don't have that. I am just one generation away from not being a Michif speaker, because although my mom was a speaker, and that day and time when she was sending off her little children to school, she felt that we would do better if we had a better command of English, and we wouldn't be made fun of or beaten up at school if we had spoken any of our Michif language. And so I don't blame my parents. I think they were doing the best they could at the time and what they thought was right for us. But that whole thread of survival that we've been able to maintain, I guess it's like these little sashes we gave you today. One strand on its own is very weak, but together we've taken quite a beating here, there, and everywhere, and there are holes that need to be mended, but it's still a really strong rope, and it's something that will sustain us through the work that we're going to do together. So we're here to collaborate, we're here to be part of a team, a consortium, and to share what we've done, because the fact that other people want to do it with us is very inspiring. So I'll leave you with that.
Hello everyone, thanks for inviting Karen and I to spend the day and a few days with you. I'm going to share a little bit of what GDI has done to help promote and preserve the Michif language. The vast majority being done with working with Norman Fleury here. But first I'd like to just give a gift to Chairman Gray.
We've got a sash for you, some music, and some of our new resources.
Sure, I'd like to invite Rana or Karen up here. We brought with us also a copy of each and every Michif resource that we've developed, so that the Little Shell tribe will have a copy that can be used however you guys see fit. So there's books, DVDs, study prints. One of the latest projects that Norman and I have worked on is another dictionary in addition to the dictionary shared today. Norman translated over 11,500 English words into Michif. And while we felt like how important this was, we felt that in order to learn the language, you also need to hear the language. It's not good enough just to see it on the page. So it's all those 11,500 words are available on the internet, M2U00091.ca, and also available in an Android app for free. The internet stuff is free, the app's free. So in the Android app, you can just slide through all 11,000 words, and then you can pick one. Like, I'm excited to be here, so I want to know how to say excited. And I just have to push play. Excité. And another one that I'll share with you is, you can call me Dave. Dave Kashinikashin. So in addition to 11,500 words, there's also 500 phrases. So things like greetings, or when you're leaving somewhere, or if I want to say it's nice to meet you. So all those things are built into this app. Currently only available for Android. We're working hard on an Apple version as well. And so right now we're working on a lesson plan app. Norman made 58 different lessons that we're working towards in that app. And it'll be available on the internet as well, so that people that don't have access to mobile devices can still have access to that learning. We also have a Michif resource guide that shares other versions of Michif in Saskatchewan. We have Isla Cross Northern Michif that is predominantly Cree with a little bit of French, and also French Michif that is predominantly French with a little bit of Cree. We also translate every single one of our children's books into Michif and narrate them again because we want you to hear the language. So all of our children's books have CDs in the back. Dancing in My Bones has a story about a young boy who learns how to jig from his musha, his grandpa. Another one of our newest stories, Rougarou Mickey. Rougarou is the Métis werewolf. And it's a fun little story from a grandma telling her two little grandboys a Rougarou story that's kind of scary, but not really. Expressing Our Heritage again has this one was I believe done in around 1999, so it has an early Michif dictionary. Métis alphabet book. This is one of our resources for the youngest kids, and so D is for Dumont, Gabriel Dumont, and then it's also translated in Michif. We also wanted to make a resource for teachers, so we worked with a man named Wilfred Burton who wrote Dancing in My Bones to compile lesson plans for teachers. So this is using 18 of our children's books to help promote Métis history, Métis culture, Métis roots, Métis medicine, Métis values, and that's all in here. And this is available for free online as well, so you can print them off.
And they almost all have Michif.
And almost all of these resources in this book do contain Michif. Yeah, we've got so much stuff here that...
While Dave's picking out his next choice, I'll just say that I was they call it a consultant. I guess it's similar to the job we heard about today. And they said, what's your goal? And I said, to eliminate my position, because if all of our students are achieving equitably and not having any issues at school because their culture and languages are being affirmed, you don't need a person in that position. And so that is why we aim to make these teacher guides so easy that someone can't say, oh, I can't do that, I'm not a Métis person, or I'd be afraid I'd offend somebody. I guess we feel that Gabriel Dumont Institute's in a position now to say that when the Michif people are making a Michif lesson plan, it's okay to use it.
Another stack of children's books. The Story of the Rabbit Dance. It shows how a Métis trapper was up in the forest and runs into these dogs and rabbits that would appear to be dancing together, and so he brought that dance back to his people. The Flower Beadwork People is it's a history of the Métis by Sherry Farrell-Rissette. Better That Way. It's a poem about growing up Métis and a lot of the fun things. Margaret Hodgson did the Michif translation on that one. Leah Marie Dorian is a great author that we get to work with, and Norman translated her books as well, The Giving Tree. And this is Leah's newest book, The Diamond Willow Walking Stick. It's about generosity and about how when you're generous, things will come back to you fourfold. And Norman translated and narrated this as well. It won a Gillette Burgess Children's Book Award, which is a North American award. Relatives with Roots. This story is about a grandma who passes on medicine teachings to her granddaughter. And then two more stories about Nolan learning about jigging and competing at Batoche. Sure. We also have M2U00091.ca. It's a virtual museum of history, Métis history and culture. It has thousands of photographs, video, oral histories, hundreds of oral histories captured by from elders across Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well. We have interviews from the St. Laurent Métis done by Father Guy Lavallée. So it's quite a robust thing. There's over 10,000 actual items on that site that could be used for research or to learn more about the Métis. I'd say a quarter of that stuff came from Laurie Barkwell. He's been quite the collaborator helping us populate that site. Sure. So I'd like to thank you again for having us, and hope you enjoy your new resources.
Next, I'd like to ask up Laurie Barkwell, but a few words first. Laurie and I have been working together for the last 20 years. When we started, well, we were already on an adventure, and it has continued. Laurie is probably the foremost community-based historian of the Michif world in North America. The work that he has done in helping establish the Manitoba Métis Federation and the support that he has given through development of primary source resources that have been utilized in court cases for the Métis people in their fight for their human rights in Canada has been critical. And he continues through the Louis Riel Institute, basically the research and history arm of the Manitoba Métis Federation. But the Manitoba Parliament didn't make, there's a law creating the Louis Riel Institute. So it's an official governmental, by statute, it exists in Manitoba. So he's been the mentor to countless attorneys and historians and scholars throughout Canada and indeed in the United States over the years. And it's just a real privilege to have Laurie back here in Montana. And Laurie's going to tell us a little bit about the Louis Riel Institute and the relationship between the north and south side of the medicine line and our relationships. Thanks, Laurie.
Kanchikiao Akrimichi, Boju, Henin, Nimi Yutanuta and Egak, Nimi Yutanuta and Wahamatek. I want to thank the Little Shell Council for inviting Norman and I to come down. I'm going to be brief because my friend Norman, I think he says he speaks 7 languages. I think he speaks 11 or 12. And when you talk about the Métis, the Michif people being multilingual, Norman is probably the foremost example in North America of that. Norman has gone to Japan and all the Scandinavian countries talking about the Michif people and the language that they speak. So he's a world traveler as well as all through Canada as well, from one coast to the other. I want to bring greetings from the Manitoba Métis Federation, the representative of the Métis Nation in Manitoba, and they would pledge their support to the consortium and helping the Little Shell group with their language stuff. as well as the Louis Riel Institute, where I'm long retired, and but I volunteer 3 days a week with the Louis Riel Institute. I work a day or so with Manitoba Métis Federation, and I brought some materials from the Louis Riel Institute. Just to give you background, in Manitoba, there's 150 some odd thousand Michif people in Manitoba, represented by the Manitoba Métis Federation. We're organized into 7 regions, and we have about 145 locals in those regions. I think our membership's about 48,000 people. My local is the St. Norbert Parish La Barriere Métis Council. I think we have 1,500 members in that local. And I can tell you that half of the members of that local have relatives in Montana, because you just hear the names of the Lormes, the Fleury's, the Lapierre's, the you say La Fontaine, we say La Fontaine, and on and on. Donnie's, which is Donné in Canada. We have thousands and thousands of relatives down south of the line. It was interesting listening to Mr. Gray Sr. on some of the deliverables, because I brought with me what we call Michif Languages, Resources, and Annotated Bibliography. This is a 44-page document that Norman Fleury and I put together that lists all the Métis resources, including, I believe, every PhD thesis that's ever been written about the Michif language. So we brought that for you as well. This package from LRI is Norman's Teaching Children. So it's the Little Métis series, we call it, Teaching Children Michif language. It's got a DVD with it, so you can watch the children and Norman interacting and having bannock and tea and whatever else they're doing, and there's little booklets that go with that. I've also brought, Norman had worked on this with a couple of academics, but there was about 4 or 5 Michif speakers who are really the experts in Manitoba, had worked on Pikrishwitak and Michif, which is a teacher's guide to teaching the Michif language. So we want to give you that as well. I've also brought a very early book that Norman and I worked on. We're out of volume 1, but we have the theory volume left. This is Lalang Michif Pikrishkuin that we had done in 2004. And I want to leave this for the Michif Language Committee as well. It's a very early version of what we did, and Norman and I have, I think, been working around 20 years. We were figuring going across the country and doing things. Also, to celebrate the opening of your cultural center, I took out of the, David Morin was talking about the virtual museum, and I have a number of articles up there. We extensively cover the history of the Chippewa and Michif Cree people across the United States as well as Canada, right from La Pointe, Wisconsin, all the way to the Rocky Mountains, to the Front Range and beyond in the Rocky Mountains. And I pulled out just a few of the papers that are in the Louis Riel Institute library, and I want to present this to the chairman. I call this a Little Shell tribal history. It's far more than that, because I have the biographies of Little Shell 1, 2, and 3, and of course after Little Shell 1 there was Black Duck, because Little Shell 2 was too young to become chief. So Black Duck's there, and Stonechild is there, and so there's biographies here, and I believe there's probably the great buffalo hunters and hunt leaders were the Davis family, who also were living at St. Francis Xavier in Manitoba, and there's probably biographies of some of the Davis family in here as well. So I just wanted to leave that with your tribal chairman for the Cultural Center to celebrate the opening of this center, and to reaffirm that the Louis Riel Institute and the Manitoba Métis Federation are prepared to support your efforts. That is a Métis value, is sharing and caring. It's the primary Métis value, and in that sense, we're prepared to stand alongside, and if we can help in any way, do that. Thank you. You can take the video.
Folks, it's my great pleasure, privilege, and honor to ask to the podium Norman Fleury, a fellow whom I've known for a couple of decades now, and we've worked together on various projects and met up at various events and functions and camps along the border. Norman is one of, he was raised by his grandmothers and great-grandmothers. He was raised by people who were born in the 1840s and 50s. And so he is one of the last of our generation who was raised in that traditional way, that multilingual sensibility that was common among all of our ancestors, that Norman embodies that for all of us today. And so is a man, but he is also more because he represents the legacy of the culture in its fullness. And in that there is a seed here that he is taking pieces of himself and planting in various places around the traditional historic homeland, that the fullness of the culture may come and blossom and bear fruit in the times to come with our children. Norman, thank you for being with us.
Merci. Kanske jag nos. Miesten utani paujan nos pevitskojan. Čevetas tamanu maragi mi gaujan istana lango mal bonjigi mi chef. Ek shitab kayash kap shishian chigagi